Music lovers, welcome to the channel. As always, I want to thank you for checking out this video and stopping by. And this video is going to be my review of the brand new, much anticipated Steve Perry solo album called Traces, which just came out last week. As a matter of fact, it just debuted on the Billboard charts at number 6, which is a pretty strong debut for Steve Perry. It's actually his highest charting solo album. His other two didn't even crack the top 10. Now, of course, the whole charting system is based on a different algorithm now than it was 20, 30 years ago. Now you got streaming and downloads and all that stuff. But I know a lot of his fans was hoping he could have had a #1 album. But you don't put an album out the same week as Lady Gaga if you want that, all right? Just note to self. But anyway, yeah, there's been lots of talk about Steve Perry over the past 20 years. Where is he? Is he ever going to come back and do an album? Now he's almost 70. And so my first video that I did about Steve, I basically kind of wrote him off and was telling people, stop believing. Look, he's not doing anything. But he proved me wrong. He came back not long after that, and there was an announcement that he was going to be doing this interview for CBS This Morning. He dropped in on Toad the Wet Sprocket in their studio. Remember that? And then he puts out this new single, and so there was all this speculation that turned into, wow, this guy really is going to be coming back, and he's going to be putting out this album, and who knows if he's going to play some shows. And so we've learned a lot about Steve, and I did a whole video about the return of Steve Perry, and I put a link up to that because I'm not going to go into the whole story of where he's been and everything. But in a nutshell, he kind of reached a point in the 90s where he just wanted to get away from music, wanted to get away from rock and roll, the whole thing. He kind of felt like he needed to feel alive without the drug of fame. He wanted to feel life. Based on the people around him and, being alone maybe. And so he just wanted to get away, didn't want to record anything, and was quite happy just, riding his motorcycle down a back road, And then eventually he fell in love. He met this woman named Kellie Nash through a mutual friend. And, long story short, Kellie Nash had cancer. She had terminal cancer. And he knew that when he first met her. But he still, wanted to see her. He fell in love with her. And she taught him a lot about life. He was with someone who didn't have a lot to look forward to, and she loved Steve very, very much, and Steve felt that. And so we learned from these interviews that he's been doing that, he was in love with this woman very, very deeply, and when he lost her, it really affected him, and he went into a 2-year period of grief, and then he kind of emerged wanting to write again. And the reason why he did was because he made a promise to Kellie. She wanted him to make sure that he didn't go into a reclusive state and never perform again and to never play music again, because he would play her demos of songs that he had. And she liked what she was hearing, and she told him, promise me that you will put this out, that you will release an album, that you will get back out there in front of your fans. Promise me that you won't just slip away back into a reclusive state. And so he promised her that he would do that. And so after he got through the grief, he decided now is time to, work on these songs. And so he took a lot of the songs that he had been already working on. He wrote some new stuff. And he built a studio in his home. And so he did this without any record labels or anybody hovering over him saying, you got that hit, you got that hit. He didn't want any of that shit. And so this album's a labor of love. When you hear where he's been through the interviews, and then you hear this album is the soundtrack to all the stuff that he's been talking about. So then it all starts to make sense. It starts to make sense that, all right, this album is not going to be like the return to rock that a lot of people are hoping for. This is going to be more of a gentle album. It covers a lot of love and loss. And sure, there is hope and there is some happiness here. But really, this is a love letter to Kellie. This is a very emotional album, and it's kind of fitting that it would be, because Steve Perry is known for writing love songs. That's his well. And so, considering what he's been through, This album is like therapy. This album is like, it's a cathartic album for him to kind of help him work through a lot of the feelings of love and loss, profound loss that he's experienced. It would have been a bit weird if he came back with like this straight ahead rock album that danced around all these topics that have really affected him. And so, he's made this album that I think Kelly would have really loved. He's even mentioned that she would have loved this album, and she certainly would have been happy that he kept his promise and put the album out. So, he's putting himself out there again. He's working with some great people. He's got some great guests on this album, like Vinnie Colaiuta on drums. He plays drums on most of these songs. John Freeze, Steve Ferrone, Nathan East, Pino Palladino, John Five. They're all on here. This is a very gentle album. It's a soft rock album that's kind of punctuated by some, soul and R&B and Motown and rock and maybe a little bit of jazz and reggae. It's definitely more of a low-key kind of album. And I'm going to go through it track by track here. I'm going to be going through the full 15 song version of this album, the deluxe version, which you can only get at Target, which is a department store here in the States. So let's get through it here. Okay, track number 1 is No Erasing, and this was the first single that we got from this album. This was the first glimpse into what Steve Perry 2018 was going to sound like, and I was most interested in hearing his vocal, because there was a lot of speculation that one of the reasons why Steve Perry had disappeared and wasn't going to come back was because his vocals were fried and he had no more voice and he couldn't sing. But he proved us wrong on that, because he definitely could sing. His vocals were definitely raspy, but they were raspy last time when he came back in the 90s with his last solo album, like with You Better Wait, which was a great, great song, one of my favorites that he's ever done. You can definitely tell that he had a much, much raspier tone than he ever had before. He still has that tone here. He doesn't have the high, clear, powerful voice that he had back in the Journey days or anything, but that's all right. He's kind of like a fine wine that's aged, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that Perry, he still sounds really, really good, and he's working with what he's got still, and he still has a lot. As for the song itself, it did not blow me away. It wasn't like when I first heard You Better Wait. That song was an impact when I first heard that one. This one is definitely, softer rock. It was really good to hear him again. That was my big takeaway from hearing it for the very first time. And the song opens up with the line of, I know it's been a long time since I've seen your face or something. And that has more to do not just with the relationship that's talked about in the song, but it's also about having missed the audience. Steve has mentioned that when he writes songs, he likes to have a double entendre kind of thing going on, where a song can mean like more than one thing. And so when he's singing this song, he's really also singing about how he's missed the audience, and it's been a long, long time since he's seen them. And this is the kind of song that I think would probably open up a show if he were to start doing some live shows. I could definitely see this being a very appropriate way to open a show. After this is a song called We're Still Here. And this song really jumped out at me when I first heard this song. And as a matter of fact, this is my favorite song on the album. I think that of all the songs, We're Still Here sounds the most like it could have come off of a Journey album. Most definitely off of like Street Talk or something, This song, I think, is just classic Perry. It's got great melodies in it. It's just very, very solid. I would put this up there with the likes of Foolish Heart. I mean, it's very, very strong. This is the song from the album that I would probably go back and listen to if I was to pick a song that I really, really enjoyed. We're Still Here. This is classic Perry. I really, really like that song. Okay, so song number 3 is Most of All, and this is a song that he wrote with Randy Goodrum, who he had also written Oh Sherry and Foolish Heart with. And what's interesting about this one is that he wrote this song before he met Kellie Nash, and this is a song that's about loss, it's about moving on, And he didn't want to play this for her because he didn't want to bring her down, make her feel sad. He didn't want to put her in any kind of headspace that would get her thinking about how he would feel once she's gone and missing her and all that. And so there were actually a couple of songs on this album that he had already written before her that were about loss, and he never played them for her. He didn't want her to hear them. And it's very fascinating how a song like this, it's kind of like you slip into it. And I've talked about this before in some other video where, a song can sometimes be like a shoe and you kind of slip into. He wrote this song never realizing how he would really live this. And so I would just kind of find that fascinating. Song's got a really nice guitar solo in it too. And it's definitely one of the stronger songs on the album. Number 4 is No More Crying. And this song was written with Dan Wilson of Semisonic. It also features Booker T of Booker T and the MGs on the organ. And this song is, a little bit more uplifting than the last couple. It's got more of a gentle, kind of a soulful swing to it. And again, I would have to say that it's probably one of the stronger songs on the album. Also read that Steve Perry has Green Onions from Booker T and the MGs as a ringtone on his phone. So interesting that he's got that ringtone. He's got Booker T playing on the song. And also it's called No More Crying. All right, the 5th song on this album is In the Rain. And just like with Most of All, it's a song that he wrote before he met Kellie Nash. And it's also a song that he would not play for her because it's about profound loss. And he didn't want to bring her down and make her sad while she was going through her struggle. And it's just fascinating how when you listen to this song, it's very, very sad, and you kind of get the feeling that it was written about Kellie, written about him losing her, but it wasn't. And I think that speaks to his songwriting craft, that he's able to write this song in such a universal way that he can plug himself right back into it from a different experience. I think that was really, really good. Okay, so up next is Sunshine's Gray, and this is the rocker on the album, folks. This is the song that I was hearing about in interviews where Steve talked about how the album, it's got its share of ballads and R&B and soul and rock and roll. This is the rock and roll. This is a song that's got John 5 on guitar. Now, John 5 has played with Rob Zombie and Marilyn Manson, and when I first heard he was going to be on this song, I didn't know what to expect. But it kind of came across to me as a bit generic and kind of light rock fare. It definitely doesn't have the same aggression as like a You Better Wait, and definitely doesn't have the same rock flair as like anything he did with Journey. I mean, come on. Perry has done some classic rock staples, and this song definitely doesn't approach any of that, but it does help bring the album up. Because we've already been through some really sad songs and some songs that were kind of swinging and swaying. So this song at least, kind of adds some more life into the album, but not too impressed with it. After that, we got You Belong to Me. This is a song that Steve Perry says was kind of Peter Gabriel-esque. And he decided to change it before he went to production. He decided to keep the vocals, but he changed the music, turned it more into a ballad. All right, so track 8 is Easy to Love, and it's a bit of an easy breezy, soulful R&B kind of song that he wrote at the last minute for the album. After that, track 9 is I Need You. What's interesting about this one is it's a cover of a Beatles classic from the 60s that was written by George Harrison, and Steve always kind of heard this song a bit differently, more as an R&B song. And so we finally got the chance to redo it. And he wanted to get George Harrison's wife, Olivia, to approve. So he played it for her. And she was halfway through the second play and she stopped it and she said, George would love this. And so that just made Steve so happy. So, of course, he's going to put it on the album. And I think that he did a better version of it than the Beatles. I really was never crazy about the Beatles version. And I think that Steve one-upped them. I really do think that he's got the better version. And so thumbs up on that one. All right, so now we get to the last song on the regular version of the album Traces by Steve Perry, song called We Fly, track 10. And this song was written about his hometown, about growing up with his parents and his grandparents. And I remember reading this interview with Steve where he talked about how he went to the home where he grew up, and he was sitting in his car in the rain, and he was just crying, thinking about how everything has changed. Nothing is the way it used to be. And, it definitely fits into the Traces theme, and just kind of going back over your life and thinking about what was and what never will be. And I have a feeling that kind of plays into this song. It's very, very minimal. And I found myself drawn to these types of songs on the album as opposed to the soul R&B stuff. I got to be honest with you, I'm really not a fan of Steve Perry doing Motown and doing the soul and the R&B. That's not really what I'm drawn to on this album. On this album, I was really drawn to the parts where Steve Perry is just really laying it out there, where it's like, it's raw. And We Fly is just, very, very minimal. I just liked the sparse arrangement of it. And it also, this is another one of those songs that I think, I don't know that it was written about Kelly, but knowing how Steve likes to do the double entendre, the double meaning stuff, you could easily plug Kelly into this song too. And so We Fly is another song on this album that I think is one of the better songs, one of the songs that I'm more drawn into. All right, so now I'm going to get into the bonus tracks that are on this album. There's 5 of them, and you can find them on the Target exclusive version of Traces by Steve Perry. And the first song is called October in New York. And this song kind of picks up where We Fly leaves off in terms of it being a very sparse arrangement, very, very minimal. And I believe that it's about his last months with Kellie Nash. He only was with her for about a year and a half before she passed away. And, this song is, like I said, very, very minimal. And it kind of goes into this standard kind of a feel. Kind of sounds like something that you would get from like Frank Sinatra, because the strings come in, and then it goes into this jazzy part with this gentle piano, the airbrush drums, and it's just a very breezy kind of jazzy song, very, very reminiscent of some old standard, like it could be in a movie or something. And these are the songs that, as I had mentioned, I kind of felt myself drawn to just because they were more original than, just popping into soul and R&B. Those songs to me just sounds like, we've already been there, done that, kind of taking a groove that we've already, heard 1,000 times over. And I'm not really drawn to those songs. These songs where he's really laying himself bare with these types of arrangements, with the jazzy stuff, and to me, this is more interesting. Even though it's like down, it's sad stuff, but I find it more original, and I just find myself more interested in listening to this, as opposed to the next song. Angel Eyes, which is, again, more upbeat, soulful fare. It kind of sounds like Uptown Girl from Billy Joel. And then after that is a song called Call on Me, which starts off with this vocal arrangement reminiscent of You Better Wait. Kind of comes soaring in, and then it gives way to this reggae vibe. And I'm not much of a reggae fan, so I wasn't really feeling this. But what was interesting about this song is that it includes the voice of Kellie Nash. He even gives her credit on this song in the album credits. Laughter and Love, I think, is the way that he puts it. But the song features her laughter, kind of comes washing in and out. And, for a song that I don't like, when she came in, it really was startling. And, it really kind of drives it home how much of a love letter this album is. That's where I really felt like he really is doing this for her. Like he included her on it. And I don't know that she ever would have expected, when she, made him promise that he would come back. I don't know that she ever would have thought that she would have been on the album. But it really kind of hit me when I heard that. I wasn't expecting it. And like I said, I think it really drives it home that this album is for her, and it really did punctuate the importance that she has on this album by including her on the album. After that is a song called Could We Be Something Again? And, that's another song that is like Angel Eyes. It's an upbeat, soulful kind of thing. Not really my style. As I mentioned, when Steve goes into that territory, to me, it's just a bit generic and bland, and I really don't pull much out of it. Not like the next song, Blue Jays Fly, which closes out the deluxe version of Traces. Blue Jays Fly is probably the most vulnerable I've ever heard Steve Perry. It's a very sparse song, very, very minimal. It's got some synthesizer, very, very minimal, and it's just haunting. It's a beautiful song. And these are the songs on the album that drew me in, that had my interest, because it was a chance for Steve to do something different and something original. And it really, really speaks to the pain that he's been going through. And it really comes through on this kind of song. I don't know specifically what this song's about, but, with lyrics like, wish you were here and stuff like that, he could easily be talking about his parents or his grandparents or something that happened earlier in his life, but he could also be talking about Kellie. And that's one of the great things about this album, is that it's written in such a way to where, whether he's talking about Kellie or talking about his childhood or people along the way, he's kind of lamenting the things in his life that have come and gone. And that seems to be the general theme throughout this album. And the album definitely is a low-key, gentle album. It's not for everyone. If you're a Steve Perry fan, a diehard fan, you are eating this album up. You love this album. No question about it. Because this is where you get to learn where he's been. Because that's what the diehard fans want. They're not out to just hear, Any Way You Want It, 2018 version. There are fans out there who just want to hear Steve Perry rocking, and they want to hear the same guy that did their Journey classics, and they don't care about what he's been through and the loss and the pain. They don't give a shit about that. They just want to hear the hits. But for the real diehard Perry fans, they want to know where he's been. They care about Steve, and they want to hear how he's dealt with all of this and how he expresses it. And if that's what you want, this album is where it's at. This is basically, as I said before, these songs, these lyrics, this is the soundtrack to the interviews that he's been doing lately, where he goes over his pain and his loss and his hope. And everything, all of that is wrapped up in this album. Now, as for me, I'm a Steve Perry fan more from his days with Journey, and I do like some of his solo stuff, but I'm not a real diehard Perry fan. But I can tell that a lot went into this album. I can appreciate that, this album has had a lot of work done. It has a lot of strong melodies. This is not a half-baked album. This isn't something that he just kind of came up with quickly. And I think that, you can appreciate something without falling in love with it totally. You can appreciate that a car has been well built and is well made, but you're not going to drive it home. You can appreciate that some paintings maybe have a lot of work put into them, a lot of love and details, but you're not going to buy them and put them up on your wall. This album, I can tell a lot of love went into this album. And, I tend to be drawn to the songs that are a bit more sparse, as opposed to the more run-of-the-mill soul and R&B stuff. We're Still Here is my favorite song on this album. I think it harkens back more to his Journey days and his early solo days. I want to know what you think. What do you think about this album? What are your favorite songs? Are you a diehard fan? Are you a casual fan? It'd be nice to get Steve out on the road. where he can play these songs and also do some of the classic stuff from Journey. Maybe that'll get his blood pumping and we'll get a more energetic album next time. This is an album that he had to make. You know, in order for him to get to wherever he's going next, he has to go through this. He had to go through this pain and experience it and share it for him to go to wherever he's going next. So let me know what you think. You know, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and be sure to hit that subscribe button too. And check the description below for links to this album where you can listen to it for yourself, and also where you can pick up the deluxe version with the bonus tracks. And hit subscribe, and I will talk to you soon in another video.